Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is to be the one to hold the dawn in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 1, This Isn't Goodbye. 5th of Great Tree Moon, 1180. It was a mesmerizing sunrise at the Imperial Palace. The warmth of the sun steadily enveloped the whole capital, and from the ornate palace windows Edelgard saw rays of lights illuminating the dark palace walls. Ever since the insurrection there were dark shadows lurking everywhere. With the sun as her companion, Edelgard felt a little bit better facing the monster she hated more than anything. Without exception, this was his favorite time to torture her. Tomorrow is your great day, little princess. It's about time you depart, and do not forget your mission. As usual, the monster appeared out of the shadows. Before she had a second to react, he pushed her against the nearby wall. Grabbing her by the throat, he started to slowly choke the life out of her. Always think about your father. After all, it would be a shame if something were to happen to him or to his precious daughter. Above all, your death would break him. He continued with an arrogant smirk on his face. One word about us to the wrong people and we will crush you and all you ever hoped to accomplish in your worthless life. Keep that in mind whenever you open your mouth to someone. We are your shadow. The shadow you'll never escape from. Edelgard nearly lost consciousness, her eyes already peeked into the black and cold abyss that was the monster in front of her. Right before she fell unconscious, the monster softened his grip and released her throat. As soon as she was released, her body smashed to the ground. Her hands softened the fall, and now she was on the ground on her knees, gasping for every bit of fresh air. Both of their eyes met. They looked at each other with pure disgust and hatred written all over their faces. She wondered if her days in Garreg Mach would also contain the daily choking, training and punishment that she was accustomed to. So far and ever since she emerged from her cage in the dungeons, that had been the daily routine. Sunrise, getting intimidated by ways of choking, lashes of a whip, or if her uncle had a bad night, punches to the stomach. Immediately after she was awake, she was forced to go to the training grounds, where she trained if she was lucky. If not, it just meant more torture and small experiments. She knew how to win her duels and any other intellectual battles. Otherwise it meant more punishment and torture. Winning was the only thing that mattered to her, and now she excelled at it. Like always, she was still gasping for fresh air. After a few seconds she stood up, started to fix her dress, and waited a few minutes until the marks on her neck slightly disappeared. She also needed to get in touch with Hubert. He was supposed to be waiting for her at the city gates. This would be the last time she had to spend with this monster right next to her. However, it would also be the last time where she could still visit her father. Heavy-hearted, she thought about what would become of her home once she's gone. Images started to appear in front of her. Images of war, the cries of her people, even more corruption, chaos. Nightmares terrifying enough that she wanted to cry, but no matter how hard she tried, she had no more tears to shed. Eventually Edelgard started to make her way through the palace gardens. It's been quite some time since she last visited the gardens. The flowers there used to be otherworldly beautiful. But like everything at the palace, the garden lost its beauty. Among the countless abandoned flowers, one flower in particular caught her attention. A crimson flower that stood alone. Seemingly abandoned by everyone, even the gardeners. These were her family's favorites. Either the red roses or the crimson carnations. Although out of the two, Edelgard preferred the crimson carnation as they were far more gentle. Upon seeing this red carnation nearly wither in front of her, Edelgard made the rash decision to take this flower with her on her journey. Gently she moved the flower and its root and planted it into a small bucket. My entire important inventory is already on its way to the monastery, so there should be no reason as to why this small bucket should be a hindrance. Or so she thought, just in case Hubert or someone like him tried to dissuade her from taking the flower with her. This tiny action made Edelgard's heart feel so much lighter. Now she had to say her goodbye to her father, the only family she had left. Before she went inside the throne room, she instructed one of the servants to take care of the flower inside the bucket. While she was conversing with the servant, she heard one loud voice coming from the throne room. "She is my last daughter. Why do you intend on torturing my poor girl further? I already am your puppet. Leave her out of this." It was her father's voice. He was clearly upset, and she already knew why. He vehemently opposed the idea that his last daughter was to act as a mere spy and puppet in an ancient war. Everything trustworthy she knew about the Nabateans and the Agarthans, she learned from her father. Going into the lion's den is indeed dangerous, but it won't be the end of her. The door to the throne room was sealed, but as soon as the guards saw her approach, they immediately opened it. From there the once shining throne was in sight. Edelgard remembered the moment where her father first showed her the throne. That day burned itself into her memory. On that day she decided that she had no desire to become emperor, but now her eyes were filled with ambition. Now she doesn't want the throne but rather the power behind it. Power to change the rotten world that allowed so much pointless suffering to happen. Right next to her father sat two monsters Edelgard despised with every fiber of her being. As soon as they heard her approach, they focused all their attention on her. If there was one thing those two monsters taught Edelgard besides cruelty, it was to hide her emotions. With a fake smile on her face she went forward. She stopped right before her father and kneeled before him. "Everything will be all right, father. I will survive, and the next time you see me I will lead Fodlan to greatness. We will see each other again." Her voice made a small crack on the last sentence. Edelgard's heart wanted nothing more but to spend these last few moments with her father, alone. But she wasn't even allowed this small request. Both the Prime Minister and Regent's face were smiling, not at the touching scene but rather at the pain this scene caused them. Her father reached his trembling hands out to her and with tears in his eyes he said, "Find someone to whom you can reach out your hands. Promise me that, my child." With all the strength he could master he moved forward and whispered into his daughter's ears, "Embrace the happiness they stole from you." Edelgard nodded affirmatively. In the heat of the moment she firmly embraced her father. They held each other and their embrace felt like the rays of light she witnessed today. A shimmer of hope for both of them. "You have to be strong now and never forget who you are. You are Edelgard von Hresvelg, my last daughter. Your mother would have been proud of you the same way I am now." For one very brief moment he looked as if he never lost strength to begin with. He looked so proud and confident, showcasing absolute faith in her. In this one brief moment Edelgard saw that her father would also never give up. They would see each other again and she would do everything in her power to realize their dreams. Her father's eyes locked onto Lord Arundel. He was supposed to be their family as well, but both she and her father knew that the real him was assassinated a long time ago. Now his corpse was being worn by an ancient enemy. Lord Arundel looked bored at the exchange. "This has become quite dull," he said while yawning. "I'll excuse myself since I have other businesses to attend to. I trust the Emperor in your capable hands." His gaze bored its way through Duke Aegir. After a brief moment they looked onto Edelgard. When Edelgard was younger she feared that look in his eyes. Now she felt nothing except pure hatred which masked under an expressionless face. "Never forget about what we spoke earlier. Never forget the hand that feeds you." With that he disappeared and warped away. From all Edelgard could gather he was an unrivaled mage. Skilled in every art of magic outside of holy magic. The day would come where even his magic wouldn't save him from her, but until then the people of Fodlan would take priority. Only Duke Aegir remained. His blood ran cold upon witnessing the exchange. He seemed to truly fear Lord Arundel, however in Edelgard's eyes that made him even more despicable. Duke Aegir truly believed he could control him, but much like her father right now he was a puppet in their game. A toy they will soon throw away once she has proven herself superior. "It seems you aren't feeling well, Ludwig. You can give us a minute of privacy." "It seems you need it," Edelgard's father said very calmly and plainly. "Please, excuse me, Your Majesty. Oh, and one more thing. Your Highness, watch over my son. Please, he can be quite reckless as he is desperate to prove himself, but his heart is at the right place." For once Edelgard felt no disgust nor hidden animosity towards Duke Aegir. In this moment he was a father talking genuinely about his son. "You have my promise. I will watch over him." As soon as Edelgard finished her response, Duke Aegir slowly left the throne room. Both she and her father looked happy. Hidden well inside his royal robes, her father pulled out an ancient map alongside a keychain with an abundance of many differently shaped keys. "Take these. You will need them. There is a hidden sewer system that runs beneath the city. Not even Volkhard knows about it. It was constructed by Ceros and Wilhelm von Hresvelg, our first ancestor. I'm absolutely certain Duke Aegir will do everything in his power to stop your ascension to the throne. You are his biggest rival right now. The next you visit the city he will do anything in his power to stop you. Likely he will resort to murder as well. This way you can make through to the city and even to the palace undetected. I love you so much, my precious little El. Tears of his hit the floor as Edelgard took the keys and map from him. She cleverly placed them near her undergarments where none would find and search for it. Her father looked truly devastated. After everything that has happened he was just a shell of his former self. But even the shadow of who he once was is still a great man. She went for one last kiss and embraced her father a final time until the fateful day where she would seal her destiny. I love you, too. Until we see each other again. Father, the death of my siblings won't be in vain. Once I return, I will make the world we dreamed of a reality. With these final words Edelgard bid her father farewell. Heavy-hearted she walked away. Before her eyes she saw the little girl she once was rushing towards her father. She saw the bright smile both of them used to have on their faces, but now Edelgard's face barely changed at all. Even though she wanted to cry, not a single tear left her eyes. She wasn't the same girl anymore, and the once innocent girl was thrown into a world that can only be described by one word. Hell. Chapter 2, The Burden of Her People. 5th of Great Tree Moon, 1180. Edelgard stood at the palace exit, lost in her memories. 117, during Edelgard's childhood. Father, can I go and play outside the palace? Please, playing with my younger siblings Leo, Rex is no fun. All of my older siblings can leave the place as they please. I want to see more. I want to see the world. Her father looked occupied. He stood in front of a massive table inspecting the complete map of Fodlan. He was lost entirely in thought. But Edelgard did not relent. With all the strength she could muster, she pulled with her fingers on his leg. The power was enough that she finally got her father's full attention. In one fell swoop, she landed comfortably in his firm and tender arms. His stern face from before had vanished entirely, replaced by a bright smile. Today you can go into the city, but only with the Praetorians and me. I have a few businesses to attend there. Yay. Edelgard kissed her father on the jaw. She couldn't wait to see the outside. Her entire body moved out of excitement. Gently she was put down by her father. Together they readied themselves to go outside. Your Highness, the iron gates will open any minute now. May the goddess be with you. Edelgard was abruptly woken out of her daydream. Her eyes focused on the iron draw gate opening up. Only a few seconds, and I will leave this place. I won't set a single foot into the palace until the day where I fulfill my destiny. Father, I swear it to you. With that, Edelgard finally focused her mind on her ambitions. She'd do anything for her people. Otherwise, her life is as meaningless as Thales says. At long last, the streets of the capital were open to her. Compared to the clamped palace corridors, the roads were a breathtaking new breeze. The palace was her prison for 6 whole years, and now after leaving, she felt overwhelmed by regret, the regret of being powerless for those who deserved salvation. This regret lit a fire in Edelgard's heart. Her wound would be her strength. With each step, she became more determined. With her renewed strength, she was attending to her people's lives. Much to her dismay, many of her kind turned to thievery. From a distance, Edelgard could spot a large group of kids stealing from a nearby merchant. It was like a cleverly planned heist only for a few tiny breadcrumbs. Get back here, you brats! The man yelled. He pursued them with a large kitchen knife in hand. Not very long after, and he had the kids cornered. The small children looked in horror as they were trapped in a murky alleyway with no way out. There was no means of escape. However, as a last resort, the youngsters climbed on the buildings. Almost all of them escaped that way except one, a fragile young boy. He looked exhausted and was malnourished. In his anger, the merchant pressed the boy's head against the floor and stretched his arm out. You little brats! Now it's time one of you pays for your thievery. By Duke Aegir's laws, we take the thief's hands right off. Since I'm a generous man, I will only take your right hand. While he restrained the boy with one hand, his knife was aimed at slicing the boy's right arm off. Edelgard had enough. With a swift movement of her hand, she stopped the blade and pushed the merchant off of the boy. That's enough. What do you think you are doing? Edelgard felt a surge of anger unlike any she had felt before. He is a boy and one of our kin in need of aid. Have you never wondered why he turned to thievery? As soon as he was saved, the boy slowly tried to get up, only to smash against the ground. He was on the verge of losing consciousness, something Edelgard was all too familiar with. His empty eyes tried to reach the sky, however, all they saw was Edelgard's profoundly concerned face. With all of her strength, Edelgard took the boy into her arms. Quickly she pulled a few cookies from her pockets. Hungry and with his last ounce of power, the boy ate the cookies. A few moments later, he dozed off with a smile on his face. For the young boy, this was the first time someone stood up for him. The merchant looked at the scene, perplexed. He's a thief. He and his ilk regularly steal from me. The merchant shouted. Edelgard responded, how come you don't offer them a little bit of food, then? Look at his limbs. Does that look like someone who could afford your wares? Where have you been these past 6 years? Nobody is supposed to help the orphans and beggars. These are Duke Agir's orders. I don't want to be seen helping any of these. Who becomes too poor is supposed to fend for themselves or die. It's his way of punishing the people of Inbar for our loyalty during the insurrection. The man explained in a brutal yet honest tone. Edelgard's jaw dropped in horror at what she was hearing. Even her white skin turned a little paler at the revelations she was about to hear. If I take that boy in for only one night, then this might be reason enough for me to get thrown into jail. The weakest of the weak are no longer needed. In Duke Agir's mind, this policy keeps the streets clean, but tell you what, it only made things worse. The number of daily beggars and thieves made my life a living hell. These kids should be lucky I won't report them. If I would, they'd all lose their hands. Edelgard knew things were wrong, but this was a nightmare. How come taking the hands of thieves is legal? This practice was outlawed nearly 500 years ago. I assume you have been living under a rock now. Duke Agir's and Lord Arundel's decrees are the law now. I don't want to put my family and myself in the same position as these poor lads. And if all I need to do to prevent that from happening is to hack one boy's arm off to scare the rest off, then I will. I gave them plenty of chances. The man looked determined. Although Edelgard's push left his mark on him, he was ready to try again. In her desire to protect the boy, Edelgard's crest materialized. A beautiful flower, the man immediately recognized it. He stared at Edelgard in awe. It can't be. Your Highness. He fell to his knees in regret, begging. Please help us, Your Highness. The man looked at Edelgard as if she was the reincarnation of Saint Ceros herself. Tears flew by his eyes, and his expression turned hopeful at what Edelgard had to say. My name is Edelgard von Hresvelg, and I vow to you that I won't abandon my people. Please rise, I need your help with this. Edelgard showed the boy sleeping in her arms. You will take him under your care. I promise nobody will ever touch you. No guard will come for you. It is about time that things change. Together with the boy in her arms, they returned to the marketplace. The merchants there looked in shock at the three of them, yet Edelgard didn't mind them. It only took a few minutes, and they reached the merchant's house. A well-dressed, tall lady greeted them. Back already, darling? Why are you this fast? Did something happen? Before the merchant could answer, he was hugged by a small girl that cleverly hid behind her mother's legs. We need to talk inside. Esmeralda, please close the door. With that, the merchant instructed his wife to close the door to their house. Once Edelgard had a better view, she saw it was a small but comfortable place. A small house with 2 floors, 1 tiny garden, and 4 rooms. As soon as the door was closed, the merchant continued. This here is the Imperial Princess. Esmeralda, do you remember the kids I told you about? The ones that are constantly stealing from us. When they returned, Her Highness stopped me from doing something I might regret. Genuine remorse came from his voice. Apologies, but how can you be so sure that she is the imperial princess? You are aware of what the people have been saying. The imperial family is dead. Duke Agir and the 7 noble houses rule now. The woman looked deeply into Edelgard's eyes. She looks like royalty, but these days you never know. And what is with that boy she has in her arms? Is he an orphan? You know the recent laws. We can't risk that. Our Emma needs us. We can't help our daughter if we get thrown in jail. Her husband readied himself to respond, but before he could say anything, Edelgard spoke up. I know how you feel. My name is Edelgard von Hresvelg, and you are under my protection. I swear no harm will befall you. The materialization of her purple flower-shaped crest accompanied Edelgard's oath. Esmeralda fell to her knees. Forgive my rudeness, Your Highness. If there is anything we can do for you, please say so. Her body began to tremble, happy as she was terrified. To calm her, Edelgard helped her up. Is there somewhere where I can place the young boy? Emma's room. She will show you the way. Emma, would you kindly show her the way? Esmeralda hastily babbled. Follow me, please, Emma said in an enthusiastic tone, oblivious to the scene in front of her. She asked. Mommy, Daddy, what is a princess? Edelgard smiled. I can tell you that on the way, but now he needs our help. This young boy is exhausted. He needs a place to sleep so he can recover his strength. Seeing Edelgard speak so affectionately with their daughter calmed both of Emma's parents down. Their tense faces gradually changed into a slight smile. All right, follow me, princess, Emma commanded while she giggled. What is nobility, anyway? Emma inquired. Nobles are basically wealthy people with a bunch of very long names. Does that mean my father is one of them? He always tells me that I can have any toy I want. It depends. He needs a noble title. These can only be given by the emperor, archbishop, king, or a powerful duke. What are all those? The child had a bewildered look all over her face. However, before she could say anything else, Edelgard went on her knees and kissed her on the forehead. Don't worry about it. Eventually, these will be things of the past. During their conversation, Edelgard was shown an excellent overview of the house. Fortunately, the house was secluded via walls. For a merchant, the house was tiny, but Adrescha's engineers knew what they were doing. The place seemed incredibly robust, safe while still being comfortable enough to call home. 2 minutes later, the tour was over, and Emma pointed at her bed where Edelgard carefully placed the boy. He looked ragged and weak. Emma, you have to promise me something. Edelgard's voice was sincere. You have to take care of him. He will be hungry, and so you need to bring him something to eat. Apples, an evening meal, everything that might sate his hunger. I will, Emma responded, and then we will play together. Witnessing Emma's childhood innocence awoke an ancient memory. She started to vividly remember the day where she went into Inbar alongside her father. 117, during Edelgard's childhood, the same day as her first memory. This is boring me. I want some action. Please, father, I wanted to escape my boring brothers and sisters and not listen to this dull blabbering. Edelgard protested against her father, who was deep inside a conversation with some important officer. As a result, her protest fell once again on deaf ears. I did what you asked of me and have been a good princess. Not now, Elle, her father finally remarked. This is important. Like I told your older siblings, as a potential future. I don't want to be your potential future ruler. I want to be your Elle. Edelgard cut her father off in her anger as she slowly removed herself from the scene. She decided to watch her father from afar while he was once again laser-focused on the conversation. It's been 3 hours, and all they did was go out of the place and talk to a dozen different people about stuff Edelgard wasn't supposed to know everything about. On the one hand, everyone treated her like a child, and on the other, her father expected her to keep up with everything. It was frustrating. From a distance, she heard a young voice singing. The lyrics entranced Edelgard. In cherished halls. In peaceful days. I fear the edge of dawn. Edelgard rushed after the voice until she eventually found the source. A young girl dressed in ragged clothes was singing on her lonesome. Your song is perfect. Edelgard's eyes were shining with excitement. Please go on. What? The girl shrieked. Who are you? My name is. Edelgard had to think for a minute. Her father warned her to reveal her actual name to strangers. I am Isolde. So you are named after the famous Emperor Isolde? This song was written in her memory. Have you been to the Middle Frank Opera recently? I have, and I saw the excellent Manuela perform. She brought tears to my eyes and stole my heart. I hope one day I will be just like her. Where are my manners? Please call me. Nice to meet you. Edelgard inspected the young girl. She looked ragged and malnourished in comparison. However, her passionate green eyes and raven hair complemented Edelgard's keen purple eyes and chestnut hair. They looked like a bizarre yet fitting pair of young girls. Together they roamed through the streets. Wherever they went, her companion sang in the hopes of attracting someone who'd be willing to spend some money. Roughly half an hour later and both girls felt exhausted, especially Edelgard's companion. In her desperation, she started to count her coins, only to turn even more frustrated. This isn't even enough for one loaf of bread. Today isn't my day, she said in a frustrated tone. Her stomach was aching. What's worse, now I need something to eat, too. From her pockets, Edelgard revealed a small bunch of delicious cookies. The smell entranced her companion. In natural response, Edelgard shared her cookies gladly with the young girl she just met. Only a few minutes later, they ran out of cookies. The girl looked guilty and cried out in frustration. Oh no, I wanted to get food for the orphans at the orphanage, but now I have nothing to show for them. You are so selfish, so selfish. What should I do? What should I do? The girl's blood ran cold. However, Edelgard was optimistic and a bit oblivious to the scene going on. Is there a way I can help? You don't know how to get some bread, now do you? It's very urgent. Some of the kids there are sick, and they need more food. A healer might also help, but the orphanage is too poor to afford more. Should we try the marketplace, maybe? I don't have any money. You don't, but my father has money. I don't want to be indebted to your father. But right now, I am out of ideas. Upon finishing, the girl's eyes doze off, defeated. All right, then it's settled. We'll go shopping. My dad will pay for it, I promise. Edelgard smiled at the conclusion. She was sure her father would easily be willing to help. After all, he could never resist his little princess. Once they were at the market, they saw dozens of exotic shops ranging from clothing out of faraway lands such as Brigid, Dada, or Sreng to the rarest delicacies both girls ever laid eyes on. Fortunately for the two of them, their wish for bread was easily satisfied. The only problem was the shopkeepers. The majority of them insulted Edelgard as too young to buy anything. It took a while, but eventually, they found a shopkeeper willing to trade with them. His bread looked delicious. However, he refused to accept their payment. I am telling you my father will pay for it. Here is his address. The Imperial Palace. There is no need to lie to me. You can't pay, you get nothing. He looked furious. Damn, thieves are now dressing young girls in fancy clothes only to steal from me. I am telling the truth, please, my friend needs your bread. Her friends are sick. Edelgard protested with all her might. Sadly, nothing she stated had any effect on the merchant. He remained stubborn. At the same time, the two of them were locked in their conversation. Her companion snuck up on the shop and carefully stole some bread. Regrettably, she wasn't great at stealing, and soon the shopkeeper took notice. You brats! The shopkeeper exploded in anger. Isolde, run! Her companion commanded with 3 loaves of bread in her hands. Both of them only narrowly dodged his arms. With each step, he was rapidly closing the distance between them. Edelgard knew her friend wouldn't make it. The bread was slowing her down too much. Here, follow me, you doofus. Come and catch me if you can. Her strategy was a success. Unfortunately, it came at a price. Edelgard was far less experienced than her companion or pursuer with the city. After a few minutes of the relentless chase, she found herself in an alleyway with no way out. Her back faced the wall, and her face was pale. She panicked, lost in despair. Thoughts ran through her. Above all, what would happen to her? The man looked as if he would kill her. She wasn't ready to die. She wanted to live. Now I got you. You won't escape me. Step by step, he moved towards her. Suddenly both of them heard a loud voice. It was Edelgard's companion who sang with all her might to get the brute's attention. Edelgard's heart made a small jump. Her lyrics were so captivating. Quickly a large group of people gathered. They saw how the man had Edelgard trapped. However, instead of intervening, all they did was listen to the lyrics. In a few minutes, her friend was swarmed with attention, yet the merchant was left out of the picture. He used this newly found confusion to get in arm's reach of her. His fingers were about to catch her. Yet before he could lay a finger on her, a beautiful purple flower manifested. Edelgard was still in horror. She had no idea what just happened. But the man cried out for forgiveness. Only a few seconds later, her father appeared around the corner. His eyes worried sick. He seemed to have been searching heaven and hell for her. All Edelgard could think of was getting into his arms. She needed her father. Her shock turned into sadness, and she quickly cried while running into her father's arms. The merchant looked like a corpse. All he could mutter were words of forgiveness, but Ionius ignored him as he walked straight towards his daughter. In one swift motion, he put her into his arms. My sweet, Elle. I was worried sick. Don't ever leave my sight like that. The city can be dangerous. His heart was still racing like hers. I am sorry. Father, I was bored, and now I am scared. Tears poured down her throat. Whatever happens, know that I will always be with you. His eyes looked wet, but he suppressed his tears. There is no need to cry, El. You there, merchant? Please explain yourself. Why have you been chasing my daughter through the streets? After a few moments, her father saw the dead expression on the man's face. Once his anger subsided, he seemed to pity the man. The man babbled a few unrecognizable words out of his mouth. Knowing he wouldn't get more out of him for now, her father turned towards El. What have you been doing here, my sweet child? How come this man chased you? He has been mean to me, father. My friend only wanted some bread, and he refused to let us buy some. Edelgard's tears slowly vanished. You made a new friend. She's the one singing. As soon as Edelgard said that, the singing voice turned abruptly silent. Without her voice holding the crowd together, they dispersed. Edelgard looked in the distance to find her friend, but she appeared to have vanished alongside the masses. So the one who sang is your friend. I hope I get to meet her. Without her, I might not have been here in time. What's more important, how is it I find you being chased by that merchant? Elle, be honest with me. I promise you if you tell me the truth and everything, I won't get mad. Elle was nervous, but in her father's firm embrace, she started to muster the courage to tell everything. She told him how she met her mysterious friend, an orphan, and how some of the orphan children became sick. Her father listened firmly to every word she spoke. The merchant's empty eyes also followed the story. His feet became shaky, and he sank to the ground. Edelgard left no detail out as she told her father about the girl's quest to procure food for her sick friends. Not so long after, Edelgard reached the part where the two met the merchant. For a quick moment, Edelgard thought about lying to make her friend look better, but she knew that her father would be disappointed in her if she did that. Heavy-hearted, she stated how her friend stole some loaves of bread after Edelgard's negotiations went sour. And the rest had explained itself. Her father looked at the merchant. Edelgard closely watched the two of them. In her heart, she could understand the merchant. Chasing a thief was his right. That said, it wasn't Edelgard who stole anything, so chasing her for someone else's crimes was wrong. But on the other hand, Edelgard was with a thief regardless of her reasoning. If her friend were to show up, her father would be forced to punish her. Her father opened his mouth. Rise, he gestured to the merchant. You believed my daughter stole from you. In truth, she truly seemed only to buy from you. It was my daughter's companion who wronged you. I will have my guards search for her. Once they find her, she will be punished in accordance with the laws. But now to you, you chased an innocent girl through the streets. And that falls under assault by our laws. Usually, the punishment is a week or two of prison or donating a heavy sum of money. In your case, each month, you will donate a decent amount of bread to the nearby orphanage. I was there, and I confirmed that the girl who stole from you wasn't lying. The kids are sick and malnourished. They need your help. Until you pay off 500 gold coins in the bread, you will be forced to donate 25% of your bread each month to the orphanage. If you continue afterwards with your donations, the state will compensate you. The merchant's feet stopped shaking. His eyes eventually were once again filled with life. It took a long minute, but when he felt ready, he responded, "Thank you so much, Your Majesty, for your mercy. My utmost apologies for the trouble I have caused. You can count on me to keep my end of the bargain. I will help these poor orphans." His words being accompanied by a full bow. He looked like he wanted nothing more but to get away. However, Edelgard's father closely inspected him. "Could it be that we have met before? I think it was at a banquet." Ionius seemed to reminisce. "Your Majesty? Do you remember Marquis Vestra's latest birthday? On that day, I was fortunate enough to accompany the Marquis' third-degree cousin." "Ah, so it was you. The two of you quickly became famous at my court chatter." "Yes, on that day, I asked the Marquis whenever he'd be willing to allow me to enter the lower echelons of nobility. You see, the two of us fell in love, but only a noble can marry another noble. It seems you might be in luck after all." Her father went closer to the merchant. He whispered into his ears. The man's eyes shined at what he was hearing. "Your Majesty, you'd be willing. I know your feelings all too well. Somewhere out in the world, there is the woman I love more than any other. So I'd be glad to give you my blessings. To see lovers finally be united." The merchant jumped for joy. He quickly hugged Ionius and went on his way. Edelgard looked a little bewildered at the exchange. Yet, her thoughts quickly wandered to her friend. Once again, she felt sad at being left behind. When the merchant disappeared, Edelgard mustered the courage and asked, "But what about my friend? She stole from the merchant. If we go by our laws, then as a child, her parents would have to pay the money, and she would be forced to return the bread. Since she has no parents, the orphanage would pay for her. However, I was at the orphanage and saw the sick kids. So instead, I decided to overlook her crime. Just this once. Power without heart is meaningless." Hearing her father say that made Edelgard feel like a massive weight was put out of her shoulders. Not before long, and she fell asleep in her father's comfortable arms. Power without heart is meaningless. Deep down, she prayed that she would never forget this lesson. Emma's smiling and carefree nature reminded her of younger herself. In her heart, Edelgard knew that this was the future she was fighting for. A bright future where children everywhere are welcomed with smiles. Chapter 3, The Capital of Corruption. A few hours had passed as Edelgard watched the boy she rescued sleep in Emma's bed. Emma, the young merchant's daughter, was very welcoming to Edelgard. She had invited Edelgard to partake in a small tea party. Emma carefully poured the hot tea into Edelgard's cup. "Thank you, Emma." Once Emma finished, Edelgard slowly moved forward and kissed the young girl on her forehead. It wasn't her favorite tea, but Edelgard was nonetheless a bit thirsty after she spent the last 3 hours applying healing magic to the young boy. The boy still looked miserable, but it was the least Edelgard could do. There were so many thoughts racing through Edelgard's head. She spent the last 3 years of her life in constant isolation. She was not permitted to leave the palace unless on official royal business. Her uncle made sure she was always under observation. It was a miracle she met Jaritza on one of her few trips outside the palace. However, she had already dispatched Jaritza to infiltrate the church as its newest professor. So that left her with only Hubert as her sole ally against Duke Agir and Lord Arundel's laws. Her back was against the wall. She lacked the required political power to fight them now. Count Berglis and Count Hevering remained undecided on whether or not to aid her, and without their help, Edelgard's ascension was doomed. She carefully sipped at the tea when the door to Emma's room slowly opened. "Your Highness? May I make a suggestion?" A small man entered the room. It was the merchant from before. "I am all ears." Edelgard gestured for the man to sit next to her on the ground. "Duke Aegir is the one who changed the laws in Adrestia for the worse. He made a series of decrees which empowered the higher nobility, buying him the loyalty of many noble houses. But economically, our country has fallen into hard times. Without the regular tribute from Brigid, our nation's economy would collapse. Only the regions belonging to houses Berglis, Hevering, and Varley have been able to thrive. Everywhere else, things have seen better days." Edelgard put her fingers on her chin as her mind quickly concocted a plan. "And Lord Arundel has done nothing to stop the Duke?" "Not that I am aware," the merchant confessed. The door cracked again, and Esmeralda, the merchant's wife, stepped through the door. Something about her reminded Edelgard of Hubert. Both her eyes and her coal-black hair reminded Edelgard of her retainer. She spoke, "According to Duke Aegir, Adrestia is now a country of true equality. And as long as the poor lose their rights as citizens, things quickly seem that way." Edelgard's jaw dropped. She had been aware that the Duke controlled the courts, but it never crossed her mind that he would have managed to do so much damage to Adrestia's legal system. "For how long have things been that way?" Edelgard inquired while she clenched her fist in anger. "For 2 whole years," the merchant answered. "No, Eric. It's been this way for 3 years. Esmeralda corrected him. "You are mistaken, my love. The Duke needed at least half a year to prepare for this." The merchant, named Eric, corrected her. Edelgard wanted to comment that she had finally learned the merchant's name, but she stopped herself from doing so. There were more pressing matters. What if I confront the Duke? It was something Edelgard had considered. Convincing the Duke was easier than persuading her uncle. "Then you will have to be careful with your words. The Duke may look frail but can be ruthless when nobody is looking," Esmeralda stated. Edelgard shrugged off a small laugh. Lord Arundel was far scarier. Eric shut in. His voice was merely a whisper. "Don't underestimate the Duke. His assassins mercilessly kill anyone who speaks up against him." Just as Eric finished, the entire plot unraveled itself before Edelgard. The two of them knew nothing of those who slither in the dark. Lord Arundel and Duke Aegir's alliance made them the most influential people within the Empire. And her uncle did his best to silence all the critics behind the scenes, while Duke Aegir did that publicly. However, it surprised Edelgard how much information was concealed from her and how they did it. There was a lot that Lord Arundel, Duke Aegir, and even Hubert refused to tell her about. And it silently Edelgard's blood boil. Duke Aegir rewards those who support him handsomely with special privileges, while those who oppose him never see the light of day again. Eric continued. "Without my standing as a former Vestra, we probably wouldn't have made it through these tough times," Esmeralda added. "A former Vestra?" Edelgard asked. "Yes, the Marquis is my brother. We had a falling out ever since I decided to marry a commoner. But it would seem he still cares about me after all, given we haven't had any trouble with the city guard." Edelgard knew it. Those eyes in her hair were the same as Hubert's. Does black hair run in the family? Edelgard wondered. From somewhere far away, she heard a familiar voice. Yes, it does. It wasn't Esmeralda who answered. It can't be Hubert. Edelgard was thrilled to hear the voice of her retainer. When Edelgard looked outside the window of Emma's room, she saw Hubert stand at the family's house entrance. Her retainer was the only one in the world who walked beside her on her path. "Lady Edelgard, my aunt, if you'd kindly open the door." "Of course, Eric, please open the door for Hubert," Esmeralda ordered her husband. "Why me? You know, I find him scary." "That's precisely why. You married a Vestra, so you must overcome your fear of my nephew." This small exchange made Edelgard giggle. A small genuine smile formed around her lips. "My dear, you look beautiful," Esmeralda commented. "Very beautiful," Emma added. She had been absorbed in her little games until now, but even while she moved around her puppets, she caught the small smile that Edelgard exuded. "Thank you. It is nice to receive a compliment for my beauty from someone who isn't working at the palace." "You are one of Adrestia's flowers," Esmeralda said confidently. "Hubert told me you are off to the monastery. My time there was simply magical. I would have almost ended up with a different husband if it weren't for my brother's intervention. But that's a story for another time." Hubert had made it past the mortified Eric, and now he checked on Edelgard. His eyes inspected her from head to toe, the same way he did after she had one of her training sessions with that monster. Hubert was always cold and calculating. He rarely let his caring side slip. Even now, he refused to share his concern in front of everyone present. Instead, he merely looked at Edelgard with disappointment. Words like "Your Highness" should have been faster probably permeated his mind. "Lady Edelgard, need I remind you that you were supposed to meet me at the city gates 3 hours ago? Also, I explicitly told you to take a few guards with you. The capital isn't exactly safe." Her retainer scolded her. "I know, Hubert. I know." Edelgard cut him off. "You owe me a few explanations. Why didn't you tell me about what Duke Agir did to our country? I wasn't allowed to leave the palace. You know the life I have lived since I emerged from the palace dungeon better than anyone. Yet unlike me, you had free reign, and you regularly left my side. But you never told me about all the wicked atrocities they unleashed upon our people. Because doing something about these things now is a massive risk. We haven't proven ourselves to them yet, and our influence within the Empire is almost non-existent. We only have your name, Lady Edelgard. As much as it hurts, you must close your heart for now. I see you are as cold as ever, Hubert." All Hubert could do was dodge to avoid his aunt's incoming slap. But alas, she was quicker, and Hubert's face was graced with a crimson mark. "She is our princess. She must help us. Don't become like your father, young man." Esmeralda's hands were ready to strike at Hubert again. But Hubert looked unfazed by it. He didn't flinch as his aunt's hand hit him. Instead, he merely looked at her with the same cold look in his eyes. "And what exactly do you want Lady Edelgard to do? She has too little influence. She spent the last years isolated in the palace, isolated from power." "That's not true, Hubert. I spent the last few years remarkably close to the ones holding power in our realm. I could try to persuade them." Edelgard had a plan, and she wanted her retainer's approval. So she continued, "I'll talk to Lord Arundel first, and if he won't budge, I'll persuade Duke Agir to reinstate the impoverished people's rights. After all, the Empire needs troops, the soldiers require the Empire to support them, and the Empire requires all its inhabitants for what is to come. I will persuade them." Everyone present was in awe of Edelgard's conviction. The room went silent. "I will accompany you, Your Highness, wherever you go." "Thank you, Hubert," Edelgard said, as she let out a sigh of relief. "I thought convincing him would take more than that." 2 hours passed after Hubert left his aunt with Edelgard to depart for the royal palace. On their way, Hubert witnessed Her Highness's compassion multiple times as she helped the people on her way. She gave a few street kids sweets, talked with the local guard for information and attended to the sick with the healing spells she practiced on herself. Hubert's heart had made the correct choice in following her, and his eyes fixated on her. Nothing in the world made him prouder to be her servant. During their trip, Hubert opted to remain silent. As such, Edelgard was quietly humming a melody to fill the void. "Lady Edelgard, do you wish to?" This melody, I once met an orphan here in the streets that hummed that same melody. Nowadays, I struggle to remember her face. Even her voice is just a blur. Hubert wanted her to focus on what lay ahead. He subtly raised his hand to get her attention in one swift motion. "Oh, I am sorry for dozing off. Lady Edelgard, soon we will leave Inver behind us. However, before that, you must focus on your confrontation with Lord Arundel. These people we helped along the way needed us, but now your mind must be clear." "I know, Hubert." He heard the pain in Edelgard's voice. "Lady Edelgard, I know you think that you can convince them, but need I remind you of what you are risking here? Invoking their ire will result in drastic consequences. Instead of making lives better for the people, saying one wrong word will result in things taking a massive turn for the worst. And here I thought I had won you over, Hubert. Edelgard let out a sigh of disappointment. Hubert, we had already discussed this. That man is only interested in using you as his tool, but if you show too much independence now at the cusp of getting more freedom, he will take it away from you. Our time at the Academy will be our opportunity to gain the power we need, but challenging Duke Aegir and Lord Arundel now on the policy that solidifies their power is suicide. And so I shall avoid my eyes. Study, while the majority of my people suffer. Lady Edelgard, your path is the crimson one. This suffering will have meaning if we make it out victorious, whereas the entire empire would be lost if something unspeakable happened to you. Hubert made small steps toward his mistress until his hand gently rested on her shoulder. It was one of the few gestures of compassion he knew. I can't look away. Not anymore. I have already done so for far too long. Edelgard's voice trembled. That's nonsense. You have suffered even more than most of your subjects. There were so many words Hubert wanted to say to her. Better than anyone he knew the hell that she called her life. The day-to-day physical training sessions Edelgard had been subjected to by her lord uncle weren't training sessions. They were inhuman torture. That monster forced Her Highness to fight until she collapsed from exhaustion. He enjoyed every wound that was inflicted upon Her Highness. Being forced to watch Lady Edelgard's training made Hubert's blood boil. As a result, he opted not to accompany her whenever she had been subjected to her training. As her servant, he had decided to close off his heart. He could not allow his anger to be turned against her. For the past 3 years, their routine was that Hubert spent as much time away from the palace to gather as many pieces of information as possible and find potential alliances. This was Hubert's purpose, but even he saw the countless new bruises and scars Edelgard tried to conceal from him. The roots of his hatred for these monsters were deep. He would never forgive himself if Lady Edelgard failed in her task. Edelgard was preparing her counter-arguments and Hubert knew there was merit to what she'd be saying, but his mind was made up. The risk was far too great. Before Edelgard could open her mouth, Hubert offered a drink to her. Please, Lady Edelgard, you feel thirsty after our talk and you need your strength for what's ahead. Her eyes widened at seeing the bottle of water before her. How considerate of you, Hubert. As she started drinking, she made occasional pauses to speak. Nobody knows Lord Arundel better than me. He will see that Duke Aegir has cost countless innocent lives. All Hubert did was nod. Shortly after Edelgard finished drinking, the palace came into sight. Hubert hated to see this building again, and from what he could gather, Her Highness felt the exact same way. Hubert, please wait for me here. Edelgard ordered. However, the drink was finally working. Edelgard stumbled. She went to her knees, her hand reaching out to him. And the hurtful way in which her eyes looked at him caused whatever was left of Hubert's ice-cold heart to shatter into 1,000 pieces. What he did was unforgivable, but it was the only way to save her future. Why Hubert, her voice cracked. I am sorry, Lady Edelgard. But I can't allow you to do this. Feel free to hate me for all eternity, but our vision for the future is too important. Following Edelgard's loss of consciousness, Hubert helped her to her feet and carried her away. It would be hours before she awoke, but by that time she would be well on her way to the monastery. Like so many times before, as Hubert carried her body, he felt an overwhelming sense of shame. What kind of protector treats the person he is meant to protect like that? He only hoped Lady Edelgard would understand that this was the only way he knew to show his care. He would do everything in his power so Edelgard could walk this path, even when it cost him his soul. Imperial Year 117. It had been a week since Edelgard and her uncle had left Fhirdiad, the kingdom's capital. Edelgard found that her experience there was more enjoyable than she had anticipated. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this abrupt farewell, but all she could think of now was how pleased she was to see her siblings again. They'd been traveling in the carriage for days with no breaks. She was completely and utterly bored. Her uncle barely spoke to her during the journey. Instead, he would occasionally stop the carriage and vanish without a warning every now and then, only to return hours later with rage written all over his formerly gentle face. 10 days have passed since he last addressed her by her nickname, El. Edelgard worried about him. She remembered how her uncle used to have many talks with the kingdom nobles about some weird shadows that were stalking them. Her uncle did warn her not to trust strangers, especially those who knew her real name. Whenever her uncle spoke to her there was a distinct warmth in his voice. Like with her father, Edelgard always felt safe when she was with him. And yet the warmth in her uncle's voice seemed to be absent ever since her uncle decided they should return to Inver. Uncle, one of her thoughts slipped into her mouth. What is it, Edelgard? Her uncle forcefully opened the carriage door. The impact was enough to send a shiver down Edelgard's spine. I was just worried about you. Please, uncle, whatever is keeping you worried, you can share your burdens with me. Yet all she got from her uncle as a response were his once beautiful, warm lavender eyes that now glared at her with cold indifference. There is no need to worry, Edelgard. If everything goes according to my plans, we should reach the capital tomorrow. Uncle, have I done anything to offend you? You have been cold and distant. You have done nothing wrong, child. Trust me, all is well between us. Edelgard yearned to take him at his word. But there was nothing right about how he said his lines. It was as if he did not care for her at all. Elle bit her tongue and decided to not confront him about this. She knew better than anyone that her uncle always protected her, and without good reason, he would never have acted like this. My uncle cares so much about me. I must be wrong. The remainder of the day felt like it went on forever. Time would not speed up no matter what Elle tried. Her thoughts eventually drifted to her mother. Edelgard grew up without a mother. Yes, she had a plethora of motherly figures in her life. She has befriended several of her father's lovers, as well as some of the female servants and her sisters, but she has never met her true birth mother. It felt as if a dagger was thrust into her heart. The explanation her father and uncle gave her was that her mother had to leave to protect us and that one day she would return. Her father further explained that by the time she returned, he would have made sure that the Empire was a far better place, and that for him to make the Empire a better place, Edelgard had to leave with her uncle. Was her father successful? Would she perhaps meet her mother? Edelgard had overheard how her uncle spoke with certain nobles about locating her. Was her uncle so busy and angry because he worked day and night arranging this reunion for her? The sun started to go down. Uncle. What is it, Edelgard? You have been different for the past few days. Has it to do with my mother? What about your mother? Last month I overheard a conversation you had with a few noblemen. You mentioned her name and how you wished to find her. Her uncle's eyes started to fixate on her. Please, my child, could you refresh my memory a little? You stated that you had been looking for her for years and that her trail had gone cold at the royal court. You pleaded with the nobles to see the king, but they refused your request. More could not be heard through the thick walls. Soon after the nobles left, I noticed you poring over a mountain of letters. Her uncle's fingers slowly touched his chin. He appeared to be deep in thought. Seconds later, his mouth twisted into a tiny smile. Edelgard, whenever you have useful pieces of information like that, feel free to share them with me. This wasn't the reaction Edelgard had expected. Is something wrong? He had caught the bewildered look on Edelgard's face. She took a deep breath and asked the question that had been on her mind all this time. Have you found my mother? There was a long, uncomfortable silence between them. It seemed as though her uncle was picking his words very carefully. Minutes passed, and there was an awkward silence between them. Edelgard tried to get a read on her uncle, while her uncle did the same to her. Throughout these minutes, they held eye contact. A clash of two lavender eyes. I have found her. It was supposed to be a big surprise. You have. Edelgard's heart made multiple jumps for joy. In an instant, she jumped into her uncle's arms. Her uncle was caught completely by surprise. His face displayed a mixture of emotions, but eventually, his face resembled the warmth Edelgard had missed so desperately. I have found her. Tears left Edelgard's eyes as she was locked with her uncle in a tender embrace. Neither of them moved until sleep finally caught up to Edelgard. She fell asleep in her uncle's embrace, armed with the knowledge that she would finally meet her mother. 5th of Great Tree Moon, 1180. Edelgard's eyes shot open. Hubert. As she did so often when she woke up after losing her conscience, she cried out for someone close to her. However, now she was more than angry with her retainer. He was one of the people that she trusted unconditionally, and what he did to her was inexcusable. Edelgard looked around. She was in a carriage. The doors were locked. Definitely, Hubert's doing. From the outside, she heard voices talking. She tried to glimpse outside, but she only made out vague silhouettes. In the meantime, she felt the carriage move. She was able to feel every little bump on the road. She bided her time, waiting for the right moment to crash the door open and to make her escape. Her retainer would have to capture her if he wanted to stop her. But this time Edelgard was prepared, she would not give him the chance twice. To harness the power of her twin crests, her mind was narrowed to a single purpose. She could have punched the carriage door with her fist and not broken it. However, the combined strength of her crests ought to be sufficient. As she concentrated, she saw that images were beginning to materialize in front of her. She could hear the creature laughing at her, reveling in her misery. She pictured a swarm of magical missiles targeted squarely at her. Even just thinking about it caused her unbearable suffering, and yet there it was, the crest of flames. Meanwhile, when she summoned the crest of Ceros, her thoughts turned to her father. So many years ago, he protected her from that shopkeeper. Both crests emerged at the same time as Edelgard released her fist on the door. The door swung open with a single powerful punch. Lady Edelgard. Hubert was horrified, as one would expect. He was riding his horse alongside the carriage and the door narrowly missed him. Edelgard felt a mixture of relief and disappointment as she saw that the door had skipped past him. She was still enraged at her retainer. He gazed at her, unsure of what action he should do next. Edelgard, however, did not think twice before sprinting to his horse and forcibly removing him from his saddle. The only thing that came out of his mouth as she flung him from the horse was an "I'm sorry." Edelgard, though, was having none of it. "Lady Edelgard, I can't let you pass. Think about what you will do." He desperately tried to reason with her. "Even if you persuade them, they will twist your goodwill to their advantage. Help the people immediately, and they will believe Duke Aegir has done so. The commoners who have little will be loyal exclusively to the Duke, but if you turn away now, you will have the opportunity to make them loyal to you once you ascend." Hubert lay sprawled in the mud. Edelgard locked his gaze on his. Her heart was still boiling with rage. In so many ways, her retainer had violated her trust. "Why, Hubert," her voice cracked. "To keep you safe," he fumbled. "Our enemies have their eyes and ears planted in every corner of the capital city. I could not tell you my true motives for opposing you. Your Highness, you must trust me." Edelgard's eyes grew wide. She was torn between two desires. Her initial instinct was to mount the horse and rush back to the capital to confront her uncle. Her other urge advised her to heed her retainer. Every time she thought of her people's suffering, her emotional side perished. But perhaps there would be more and better ways to serve her people once she arrived at the monastery than convincing two monsters. Hubert, who was lying on the ground, gazed up at her. The dirt was all over his clothes. She could see that he was already wearing his uniform from the academy. The beautiful pine cone and black uniform suited him. After a few seconds of consideration, she decided to give him a chance to explain. "You have 3 minutes to explain yourself." At first, Edelgard refused to lend him a hand as she saw that Hubert struggled to get up. But then she did reach out her hand and Hubert accepted it. The air between them was silent. "Lady Edelgard, our foes have been following you non-stop for the past 3 years. Inver is now swarming with them. Had we chosen to talk about them, I am afraid they would only intensify their torture of you, so I held off my tongue. I also could not reveal to you what terrors Duke Aegir and Lord Arundel unleashed upon the people of the Empire. Despite their best efforts to break you, your heart is still pure. I can feel your urge to help the people. What the two did, taking away many commoners' rights to empower the nobility, is wrong. But whatever we do about it now won't help. Even when these two monsters are to be reasoned, they still twist it against you. Any reforms they'll make will come from them. They are conveniently going to forget your name, and the commoners whose lives improved, because of your efforts will only know that Duke Aegir or Lord Arundel has helped them. Any loyalty they would have felt for you will go to the wrong people." Hubert made a pause as he fell to his knees and kneeled. "I beg of you to bite your tongue. In a few months, we will change the world on our own terms." Edelgard looked down at Hubert. She could tell that underneath his grim exterior, he was suffering greatly. She took a long glance at the horizon before speaking to him. Inver was now a long distance away. She could still see the city from a distance, but she would soon vanish into the horizon. Edelgard had a mournful expression on her face. She wanted nothing more than to save Fodlan, but when she returned, she would be ready to be crowned on the verge of war. She instructed Hubert to rise. She saw the pain in his eyes mirror hers. Much to his surprise, Edelgard embraced him. "I forgive you, Hubert. It's us against the world. We have promised each other to change the world, and let us keep this promise. We will not rest until we have changed all of Fodlan." Chapter 4, 3 Nabateans and the Crimson Flower. 12th of Great Tree Moon, 1180. It had been a week since they had left when they finally caught sight of the monastery. This was the school that both of her parents went to, and it was there that they met each other and fell in love. Her gaze was drawn to the outside of the carriage window. As she watched this magnificent place grow larger and larger, she started to daydream about her parents, about how magical their story was. To Edelgard, it was the only beautiful thing associated with this location. She was well aware that her mission was to infiltrate the church, which many would regard as treasonous. Even her future Adrestian classmates were likely to turn against her. Holding on to the memory of her parents was all Edelgard could do to keep herself from falling deeper into her depression. Even though she and her entourage were still miles away, she was already able to spot the enormous cathedral, and immediately adjacent to it was the Goddess Tower, which was the place her father told her that he first met her mother. "Lady Edelgard, it will take us 3 hours to arrive. From what my contact has told me, the heirs to houses Aegir and Hevering, as well as the second son of House Berglis, Caspar, have arrived before us. My contact also mentioned that she is quite disappointed with them." "Thank you, Hubert. May I inquire about the identity of your mysterious contact? I am curious why your contact feels so negative about our 3 future classmates. As our leader, I am expected to lead us to victory not only in the coming mock battles but also." Edelgard stopped. She did not wish to speak about the future yet. She knew that she had to harden her heart for this. Hubert looked at her deep in thought. "I suppose knowing that the only commoner in our class also works as an informant for me won't do you any harm. So the mystical songstress works as an informant for you." The look of surprise on Edelgard's face was priceless. "We both know you are not the sensible type, so how did she come to work for you?" 2 years ago, there was an incident at the Middle Frank Opera House in which several minor nobles and other fans attempted to force themselves on her after the opera ended. It was an act of depravity. The nobles in question went as far as having their servants assault her in order to get back at her. However, while I was obeying my father's orders and watching her performance, I became aware of something odd taking place backstage, and I decided to look into it. I persuaded my father's escort to join me, and we arrived just in time to aid her. Dorothea fought valiantly, yet my help came in the nick of time." As soon as Edelgard found out what the nobles had been planning, her face contorted with disgust. Fortunately, her mind eventually shifted to her retainer, and she was genuinely proud of him. A silent question in her eyes asked why he had not told her this earlier, yet Hubert refused to answer the question she already knew the answer to. Those who slither in the dark would have overheard them conversing about such a major event. There was so much her retainer was forced to keep a secret. Edelgard wanted nothing more for him but to share all his secrets with her. Before Edelgard commented on the tale, she asked, "Hubert, we are no longer in Inver. There are so many secrets between us and you no longer have to carry them on your own." All she received from Hubert was a cold silence. "Lady Edelgard, now that you aren't under their intense watch anymore, I will try to inform you of everything that I can, as long as it doesn't contradict my duties to protect you." Edelgard could tell from the way he spoke that he had prepared for this moment. His usually stern face now had an expression only Edelgard was able to read. He seemed to ask for her permission to leave, but she wasn't done with him. Edelgard quickly grabbed his hand to signal that she didn't want to dismiss him yet. "I am very proud of you, my retainer. You were there for the people of Inver and for Songstress when I could not." Edelgard made a small pause. She thought how Hubert helped the young diva she heard so much about filled her with happiness. "Oh, Hubert, if you knew how romantic that was what you did for her. Perhaps our time at the academy will be an enjoyable one," she smirked at her retainer. "If you think so, Lady Edelgard." Hubert looked at her again with his usual cold expression. "One more thing, Hubert, please tell the carriage rider to hold on for a moment. There is something I need to do." "It will be done, Your Highness." Because Hubert moved at such a rapid pace, the carriage that she was in along with her entourage came to a complete stop after only a few seconds. Edelgard was in such a good mood that she jumped out of the carriage. She investigated her own possessions. There was a lot of baggage, but she was only looking for one thing, and it seemed like she couldn't find it anywhere. "Please, it must be here." Her eyes searched endlessly. After what felt like an eternity, she found it. A metal bucket with one beautiful crimson carnation inside. Her hands grabbed the bucket and she gently touched the flower. The flower's smell took her back to all the wonderful memories she had made with her siblings playing in the palace garden. Her heart bumped for joy at seeing this flower unharmed. Hubert appeared behind her with a slightly annoyed look on his face. "Lady Edelgard, are we ready to continue?" "Not yet. There is something still left to do. Do you want to accompany me?" Her grip around the bucket strengthened as she moved away from the carriage into the open fields surrounding Gareg Mach Monastery. Her retainer nodded as he matched her pace. The fields surrounding the Gareg Mach were breathtaking and filled with all kinds of different flowers. Edelgard kept her eyes open for the perfect spot to grow her flowers. Her dream was to one day see the field in front of her filled with these crimson carnations. After getting her white gloves dirty while planting the flower, Hubert looked at her with impatience, but, to her great surprise, he did not say a word the entire time he was staring at her hands. From his pockets, a fresh pair of white gloves appeared. "Here, Your Highness." "Hubert." Edelgard was happy to see him be so thoughtful. "It's a precaution, nothing more," he shoots her off. "Lord Arundel would do unthinkable things to you were he to hear the church had gotten wind of his experiments." Despite that, Edelgard was genuinely grateful to him. As she carefully removed her dirty gloves, she caught her retainer, staring at the numerous ugly scars on her hands. "I know Hubert I am repulsive," Edelgard thought to herself. "Once we enter the monastery grounds, Lady Edelgard, you must be especially cautious about exposing any skin. All the girls in our class are included in that. I have already made arrangements with Lady Rhea and her advisor, Seath, so that you will not bathe with the other girls, but rather you will be given access to a special bathroom that is just for you." Even though Edelgard knew the seriousness of her situation, a part of her felt sad that she wouldn't get to bathe with the other girls. A great opportunity to casually exchange stories and get her classmates to know her was stolen from her. This left a bitter taste in Edelgard's mouth. She knew that compared to someone like the mystical songstress, she would pale in comparison. "Hubert, we are ready to continue." "As you wish, Lady Edelgard." Edelgard took one last look at the flower she planted. The crimson flower stood there alone, seeking the warmth of the sun. Just like Hubert predicted, it took them precisely 3 hours to arrive. Edelgard was impressed by Gareg Mach's massive gates. This wasn't a monastery but a fortress, rivaling Fort Mercers and the Silver Maiden. There were multiple smaller towns at the foot of the gigantic mountains leading up to her seat of the church's power. The townsfolk ran up to her carriage once they saw her approach. "It's Lady Hresvelg," she heard a young boy shout. "Someone must inform Lady Rhea. The first Hresvelg in ages that I have been able to witness this." A senior citizen expressed his gratitude. Judging by the tone of his voice, he sounded genuinely happy. "This is the ideal chance for the church and empire to patch up their broken relationship," another man said. He was dressed in the white uniform, a sign of the church's priests. Seeing the joy on the faces of the people around her was like having a knife plunged right through her heart. She knew what she was going to do after the year ended. "Please follow us." Edelgard overheard a knight of Syros speaking with the carriage rider. The knights went into formation around her entourage. The forces of the church shielded her from the massive crowds. This was the first time she laid eyes on the knights of Syros. Many fairy tales were written about them, but Edelgard wasn't a fan of most of them. However, she had to give credit where credit is due. They seemed like a formidable force. A fighting force she would one day oppose, and she needed one of her own capable of defeating her tormentors. 15 minutes later, Edelgard reached the entrance gates to the monastery. From her gigantic balcony, she saw her, Lady Rhea, leader of the Church of Syros and, according to her family's records, the one who manipulated history for 1,180 years. Lady Rhea smiled broadly and gave her a friendly wave as she approached. While this was going on, Edelgard had his attention fixed on what was to come. As soon as the carriage stopped, she immediately got out. She was greeted by an emerald-haired man who appeared to be in his 30s. "Greetings, Miss Hresvelg. Please call me Seath. It's a privilege to have you join us as a student." He made a long bow before her. Edelgard maintained the same expression she had when she had talked to Duke Agir and her uncle. A mask that concealed the emotions that she was experiencing. "It's an honor to meet you as well," Edelgard lied with a smile that never reached the eyes. "Why is another of her kin here?" Hubert looked at Edelgard with the same surprise. "For how long have you been at the monastery?" Edelgard inquired. "I have been here for a year, but my brother has been summoned to the Archbishop's side for quite a few years." An unfamiliar, childlike voice spoke. Edelgard looked around to see an emerald-haired girl standing next to her. "Personal biography aside, you look beautiful, Miss Hresvelg." Edelgard was shocked to hear these words come out of the young girl's mouth. "What makes you say that?" Edelgard carefully asked. "Your unique uniform with its flower-shaped cravat, your lavender eyes, and the red leggings coupled with your cape make you look so good." As much as she tried, she couldn't suppress the little blush on her face. "Thank you for the compliment. May I ask what your name is?" "Sure, my name is Flayn and this is my older brother, Seath." "My name is," Edelgard wanted to respond but was interrupted. "Oh, I see you already made acquaintance with my siblings," another soft spoke from the massive entrance gate. "Allow me, as the Archbishop, to welcome you, scion of House Hresvelg. I am Rhea. There is no need for formalities between us. As I was saying, my name is Edelgard." "Edelgard? A beautiful name. How is your father, Ionius, doing?" "About 20 years ago, when he was accompanying a young student to graduation, was the last time I saw him." The student's departure through this gate from the monastery was accompanied by an expression of pure joy. "You know my parents?" Edelgard faked her surprise. Of course, she knew about them, but to state this openly. "My father has aged quite a lot since this event." "The goddess must have blessed you with good health." "That she has, child." Rhea looked not in the least offended by Edelgard's comment. "Rest assured, it's not the first time people have been curious about the ages of my brother and me. Let us return to the subject of your parents." "Yes, I knew them. Ionius was quite a handful when he was house leader of the Black Eagles. It is a miracle he managed to win the battle at Gronder Field. Your mother, however, was an exceptional student. She passed with flying colors. If Anselma von Arundel had been in the same class as your father, perhaps he would have been a better student." Edelgard remained silent. Hearing about her parents did fill her with joy, but she couldn't stand the sight of the person that was telling the stories. Rhea distorted history. In this aspect she was no better than her tormentors. For the time being, Edelgard had to accept that Rhea's account of her parents matched what her uncle had told her about them. "You look a bit pale, my child. Are you feeling all right?" Rhea made several steps toward Edelgard. "I am well, Lady Rhea. Thank you for your concern." In order to calm her down and stop her from advancing, Edelgard made a small, humble bow, which earned her a small giggle from Rhea. "You are well trained in mannerism, dear child." Child, child, child. Edelgard hated it whenever she said that. Only her real mother and father should call her that. Even though Edelgard was filled with anger and bitterness whenever she laid her eyes upon the Archbishop, she also saw a fleeting hope that Rhea might have some answers regarding her parents. Having closure to the tale of her parents wasn't as important as removing Rhea from power, but when Rhea was the key to finding more answers, why should she refuse? So Edelgard would bite her tongue and look past the numerous times she'd be addressed as a dear child. Lady Rhea, I'd love to chat with you more about my parents one of these days. For now, I am a bit tired. My journey was long, and I need to rest a bit. Of course, child. Flayn will show you around. Tomorrow Seath and I will summon you for another important matter. Seath cut in. Also, the other house leaders arrived before you today. They are all here on the monastery grounds somewhere. If you wish to see them, you can feel free to do so. And another thing, the special request has been granted. Flayn and I will show you where Edelgard can bathe and clean herself. Thank you, Seath. Before Edelgard could say anything, Hubert thanked him and made a humble bow. A scion of House Hresvelg attending the monastery has become a rare occurrence. As Archbishop, I am well aware that the relationship between the Church and Adrestia used to be stronger. Please, Princess Edelgard, let us walk forward together. May the goddess help shine upon us. Ugh. How many times will she mention the goddess? She almost won me over in the first half. Edelgard would have to endure her constant invocations of the goddess's name, which is a horrible thought. The very same goddess that abandoned her. I am sure Adrestia and the Church will become closer over the coming year. Edelgard gave Rhea another smile that never reached her eyes. Flayn was able to observe that Edelgard was well prepared to leave the scene. She quickly grabbed Edelgard's arm and strolled along her way. Seath and Hubert made an effort to stop them, but Flayn managed to get away with Edelgard following close behind. Thanks, you saved me there, Edelgard admitted. Save you? How did I do that? Flayn asked. Never mind, so you have been here for exactly a year? Where did you used to live? That's a secret. Fine, I won't pry. It was in a small hut deep within a forest. My brother never told me whether or not we lived in the Alliance, Empire, or Kingdom. He merely told me that the nearest city was more than 10 miles away. Thank you, Flayn, for your honesty. No problem. So where do you want to go first? You must be hungry. Let's go to the dining hall. That's acceptable. Lead the way. Edelgard's tour with Flayn was a lot of fun for both of them. A stunning lake was the first location that they came across. How come there is a lake here? I actually don't know the answer. According to Brother and Rhea, this lake has been here since the first Archbishop created this place. It's just that we are on top of a mountain. It merely came as a surprise to me. You haven't been around much? It is not super rare to encounter a small one like this one on top of a mountain. Anyhow, this place is amazing if you want to fish. Do you have experience with fishing? Unfortunately, I don't have any experience on the subject. Flayn looked disappointed. My father and mother taught me how to fish. It's one of the few things my mother left me with before she passed away. In the midst of their conversation, there was a brief pause. Edelgard's hands instinctively reached out to Flayn. I grew up without my real mother. But how? It's a long and complicated story. Even though I never met my mother, I have always missed her. Please, Edelgard, let me treat you to a meal. Whenever I am sad, there is nothing better than cooking. Flayn, I never had the chance to cook in Inver. So my skills are a bit underdeveloped, if you catch my drift. My mother taught me a thing or two. I assure you, we will succeed marvelously. 1 minute later, after negotiating a few flights of stairs, they arrived at the kitchen and dining area of the academy. An efficient and straightforward layout was used. Edelgard was forced to admit that, at first glance, she had a favorable impression of this location. And this is the kitchen, Flayn said proudly. It appeared to be an absolutely stunning kitchen. There was a bit of everything there. Different shaped pots, kitchen knives, vegetables, dishes, and sausages. There was even special storage for all the different kinds of fish they had available. Flayn, I am new to cooking, so I will refer to your judgment. Leave it to me. Flayn had a massive smile on her face. First we throw the fish into the pan. Then we start the fire and, while the fish is getting warm inside the pan, we cut some vegetables. Some onions and tomatoes should do the trick. Alright, as the more experienced one, you will watch over the fish and I will cut us some vegetables. 10 minutes later. Why is the fire so big? Edelgard shouted to Flayn. It was clear that Flayn was the driving force behind the flames. I am sorry, I got distracted while helping you with the vegetables. Edelgard, please put the weapon down. Flayn begged her to put down the sword she borrowed from one of the knights. Suddenly, the two noticed that a purple-haired student had appeared. She quickly took hold of the pan. Her hands instinctively reached for the pepper and salt. She took the pen to another plate, and she put a stop to the fire with relative ease. Flayn, are you all right? Edelgard called out to her accomplice. Thank you, mysterious stranger. Flayn looked at the purple-haired student. And the mysterious stranger looked back at her. Can't breathe, too scared. Please don't hurt little old Bernie. Calm down, we are not going to hurt you. We are thankful for your aid. Edelgard wanted to approach the girl but that made her shrink and fall to her knees. Please, I beg of you. Have mercy. Edelgard changed her tactic. She took up a vegetable she had cut and showed it to the girl. The girl's eyes focused on the vegetable. And before Edelgard could speak another word, she was already on it. All Edelgard did was remove Flayn from the kitchen as they saw the purple-haired student do her thing. The student was quick, and she seemed to have little trouble finding things. She fixed the mishaped vegetables for Edelgard and Flayn, and she cut down many new ones. All of them were equally shaped, and she even saved the fish. A pleasant aroma quickly took the place of the burned smell. The expressions on Edelgard and Flayn's faces were instantly transformed into a ravenous hunger. 5 minutes passed, and the purple-haired student was finished preparing 3 handsome plates. She did not look them in the eyes while she handed them the plates. This is my peace offering. Please don't kill me. This mind of yours, Edelgard sighed. Everything is going to be alright, Bernadetta. How do you know my name? I heard rumors about the shy and reclusive daughter of House Varley. I am surprised that Hubert didn't mention you. And there are not many families with purple hair. And even fewer girls that fit all these criteria at your age. Bernadetta looked shocked. Edelgard, however, tasted the food, and her expression was one of complete happiness. I am happy to meet you, Bernadetta. The Black Eagles will require your excellent cooking skills for what is to come. I am going to be your house leader. Call me Edelgard. You are Lady Edelgard. Yes, Bernadetta, and please, you can drop the honorific. Bernadetta, please dine with us. I want to know more about how you became such an excellent cook. Flayn searched for an empty table in the corner of the room. Bernadetta eventually calmed down, and she followed them to the table. Upon seeing that nobody was in their proximity, she started to talk. I am new here. 3 days ago, my mother's servants dragged me out of my room and into the next carriage. Her servants did not relent until I found myself in a new room. My new room is very close by. But I was too afraid to go out until I got very hungry, which is where I met the two of you. You've shown tremendous courage, Bernadetta. Edelgard praised her. This poor girl. What did Count Varley do to his own daughter? If the rumors are to be believed, I can't believe such a monster fancies himself a father. Bernadetta, you were amazing just now. How you saved us back there. My big oaf of a brother would have given me a handful. He rarely allows me to have fun. Flayn joined Edelgard in her praise, and the way she spoke about her brother earned her a small giggle from Edelgard. The way you describe your brother reminds me of Hubert. Is he this bad? Flayn let out a small giggle. No, but he also rarely allows me to have fun. Bernadetta was trying her best to follow the conversation while Edelgard and Flayn started to exchange some funny stories involving their two guardians. He has done what? Yes, you heard me. When I was 7, Hubert fought a boar and lost miserably. In hindsight, it wasn't so funny, but the way he proclaimed that he would be the one to slay the beast. It was just priceless. So when the boar defeated Hubert, who defeated the boar? My uncle, Edelgard answered, her face turning bitter upon answering. Your uncle? Flame asked innocently. He is the current regent of the empire, Volkhard von Arundel. The pain was too much to think about the man her uncle used to be. Two images simultaneously fought for supremacy in her head. The image of her tormentor that laughed at her in chains and the image of the kind protector that slew the boar and cradled her in his tender arms. There is no point in dwelling on the past anymore. Get yourself together, I have to move forward. This was fun, Flame, Bernadetta. I have to excuse myself. After rising from her seat, Edelgard gave a polite little bow. Edelgard, you look unwell? Should I get you to see Professor Manuela? It's nothing. Flame, could you? Never mind, thank you for being an excellent tour guide. I need to take a bit of a stroll alone. I hope you don't mind. It doesn't bother me one bit. Bernadette needs my assistance getting back to her room. If you would, Bernie, please come with me. I will guide you to your room. Bernadette gazed at her savior. Without a word she silently followed Flame. Relieved, Edelgard let out a sigh. Her time spent with Flame was a pleasant experience for her. If Edelgard hadn't known better, she wouldn't have guessed that this girl was a Nabatean. Why did they enslave mankind? And how much does Flame know? She didn't strike me as someone who would be involved in any of the acts my ancestors say the church's leadership has committed. Was this innocent face a facade? In my life, I can't afford to take second chances, but neither can I act rashly. I will simply have to keep an eye on her. But if this is her real self, then I don't want her to come to harm. Chapter 5, Meeting the Future of the Continent. 12th of Great Tree Moon, 1180 afternoon. The more Edelgard looked around, the more she fell in love with this place. The place had a certain beauty to it. Students from across all corners of Fodlan gathered here for this 1 year. On her way to her future classroom, she bumped into a young ginger-haired girl. The girl was roughly 5 centimeters shorter than she was. Apologies, I am looking for a knight with the same hair color, she pointed at her. Have you seen him? No, I am afraid. Why do you have to find him? He is. She was stopped in her thoughts as she saw Edelgard's red cape. You are a Black Eagle? No, wait, could it be that you are their leader? The Imperial Princess. Edelgard felt a bit conflicted about the change of topic. I don't mind helping you find this knight. I've got the time to spare. Oh please, you shouldn't bother yourself with such trivial things. The girl's reaction to meeting her revealed that she was awestruck. It is true that I am the Imperial Princess, but I do not want special treatment. And neither do I deserve it. Judging by your blue uniform, you are a member of the Blue Lions. Yes, I am. My name is Annette. I am the niece of Baron Dominic. She showed respect by bending her head slightly. It's a pleasure to meet you, Annette. I am Edelgard. You already know that I am the Imperial Princess, but please just call me Edelgard. A handshake followed the giving and receiving of one another's names. A handshake took place. Where do you suppose this knight is hiding? Edelgard inquired. He has been avoiding me for quite some time. Edelgard let out a small sigh. I have heard tales of how a member of House Dominic abandoned their family and fled into the arms of the church. Could this knight be Annette's father? If so, poor girl. Even when he was powerless, my father never abandoned me. The look of determination in his eyes was my salvation. A notion of strength I was always able to rely on. So this knight you are talking about. You mentioned he has the same hair color. Is that a coincidence or? Annette appeared to be very anxious about something. Without realizing it, Edelgard almost asked her the question she wanted to avoid being asked. Is everything all right, Annette? A crimson-haired boy appeared. He gently touched Annette's shoulder. What were you two talking about? I am fine, Sylvain. Thank you for checking on me. No problem. At first, he was going to continue on his way, but then he decided to check Edelgard out. Do you believe in love at first sight, or should I walk by again? The red-haired man asked her in a gentle tone. Edelgard responded with a genuine giggle. This was the first time someone flirted with her since the Hresluft birthday parties of old. It is nice to see a peer flirting with me. Perhaps I am not as repulsive as I thought. Edelgard's chest puffed out in excitement as her heart leapt with joy. As Edelgard reached out her hand to the handsome red-haired boy, another hand emerged from behind among the students walking by. The hand slapped Sylvain so hard that he smashed to the ground. A female student yelled, "For once, Sylvain, stop flirting with every female you come across." Her golden hair contrasted with her fiery green eyes. Edelgard could not deny the fact that the girl possessed a stunning natural beauty. But weirdly enough, she also felt bad for the red-haired student. He only tried to make conversation, so this punishment seemed a bit extreme. Edelgard's eyes reflected her confusion at the ongoing scene. "Don't worry about it, Edie. Every single girl he's ever met has heard this pickup line." A girl with passionate green eyes and raven hair reassured her. She stood 1 foot behind Edelgard. In response, Edelgard turned around to greet her. Internally, Edelgard's heart felt crushed. Who is that boy that he can toy so easily with my feelings? Am I that repulsive that people will only joke about dating me? You are the Imperial Princess? I merely guessed, judging by your red cape and how you are a female student. Also, Hubie told me so much about you. Your assumption is correct. My name is Edelgard von Hresvelg. And you must be Dorothea, the mystical songstress. Edelgard made a small, humble bow. Please just call me Dorothea. And you may just simply call me Edelgard. They locked gazes for a moment. Edelgard was thankful to Dorothea and Ingrid. If it weren't for them, she might have fallen for the boy's lies and tricks. To Edelgard's delight, she quickly became transfixed on the raven-haired girl standing before her. "So, Hubert, you rescued this beautiful maiden when she was in trouble?" Edelgard had the urge to tease her retainer. "Now I understand why you rescued her." Edelgard's gaze traveled around the room, taking in the various features of the stunning student standing in front of her. "However, if I bring that up to Hubert, all he will do is inquire as to whether or not I received a blow to the head." Suddenly, she had a mental image of a potential discussion with Hubert about the subject at hand. Her retainer reprimanded her in his usual icy tone, asking, "Lady Edelgard, have you been on the head or something? Me and her together? Your Highness, allow me to investigate your mental capacities." "Ah, Ingrid. You nearly knocked my teeth out." "I was simply trying to break the ice." Sylvain's hands touched his swollen face. "And get yourself into a lot of trouble." Ingrid finished for him. "This girl is the house leader of the Black Eagles and the Imperial Princess no less." "Thank you, Ingrid, for your concern, but I'd be a poor princess if I couldn't handle someone like Sylvain." Edelgard attempted to project confidence. "I can't believe I was almost swayed by his charms." "Hold on a second, Hubert forewarned me about that guy." Hubert's voice echoed in her mind, "Lady Edelgard, be wary of Sylvain José Gautier and Laurence Hellman Gloucester. These two, despite their many advances toward women, treat them with no dignity. As a matter of fact, Hubert warned me about him and a certain Laurence." Edelgard attempted valiantly to maintain her confident charade. Dorothea couldn't contain her giggling. Once she finished giggling, she stepped closer and whispered into Edelgard's ears. "So Hubie gave you the full report then?" Edelgard's pupils widened in shock. "Oh, so Dorothea also reported this. I should have figured she would be the one to report this. Hubert was never good with people." "Thank you, Dorothea, for helping Hubert," Edelgard whispered back. "What were you two whispering about?" Annette asked. By the looks of it, she had recovered from her state of shock at Edelgard's near-to-personal question. Both eagles exchanged glances with one another and then nodded their heads in agreement. "We talked about Edie's little lover." "We did not," Edelgard protested. "And I thought we were talking about Hubert," Dorothea insisted. "Hubert is only my retainer." Edelgard shot her off. "Oh, so that means you are still open for a date." "That's good. My schedule is free." Sylvain wanted to shoot into the conversation, but Ingrid had none of it. The lioness smacked him again, and this time he had enough. "You are no fun, Ingrid. Now my nose is bleeding. I'll be off to see Professor Manuela." The lion excused himself. "You better not flirt with her, Sylvain. I have eyes and ears everywhere." Don't bring shame upon our house before the academy year even properly started. Ingrid warned him. The young women observed Sylvain as he made his way out of the massive hall. Where are we, by the way? Edelgard inquired. This is the reception hall, Ingrid answered truthfully. I see what you are doing. You are trying to change the conversation topic. Dorothea teased her. Edelgard sighed. I already told you. There is nothing romantic going on between me and my retainer. Dorothea giggled again. I know, but the looks on Annette and dear Ingrid's faces were adorable. Dorothea, please don't make fun of Faergus fairy tales. Ingrid said, in her usual stoic voice. However, both her and Annette's faces flushed with crimson. You see, Edelgard, I caught the two reading a certain fairytale, and in it, the princess fell in love with her knight. I couldn't resist the comparison between you and Hubie, and so I teased the girls about it. Dorothea, this is inappropriate conduct. How many have you teased with this? Edelgard started to feel truly worried if this rumor got out of hand. There is no need to worry. I only teased these two, and they haven't told anyone else. They were too embarrassed about that. It became our little secret, but now that you cleared up the confusion, there should be no reason to worry. So you don't love your retainer? Annette questioned. I care about Hubert, but we are not a couple. Good. Thank you for clearing that up, Ingrid stated, her face gradually returning to its normal color. So what do we do now? Dorothea asked. Initially, I was looking for our classroom, Edelgard stated, but then I met Annette and as I was about to help her. I am sorry I have to go. It's getting late. Annette quickly excused herself. Wait, Annette. Edelgard tried to stop the young girl. I hope I didn't upset her. Edelgard lowered her head at Annette's disappearance. Don't worry, Your Highness, I will look after her, and so Ingrid rushed after Annette. Dorothea smiled at the scene of Annette running away, only for Ingrid to come after her. So that leaves only the two of us. Dorothea took a step closer and reached her hands out to Edelgard. Let me show you around. For a split second, Edelgard was hesitant before she took Dorothea's hand. To Edelgard's surprise, her hands were rougher than she expected. Dorothea must have had training with a weapon. In less than a minute, they had arrived at the stunning courtyard. This is where the 3 classrooms are. The banner of our nations represents which house belongs where. They stood under a stone terrace. The corners of the courtyard were covered in stone. These stone underpasses are so that in the worst of weather we can still attend our lectures. Edelgard liked the design. This place looks astonishing. However, she had to admit she hated how the classes were divided. Her dream was to reunite Fodlan, so to see it divided into 3 hurt. Why should the place you were born have a say in which class you belong? Why do we compete in pointless mock battles? Does the Archbishop not see what kind of behavior she encourages with that? And yet as Edelgard's eyes gazed around her, she felt at peace. She saw so many different students from different places. One of these students could be seen sitting in the middle of the courtyard, where it appeared that he was painting a painting of the area. Gareg Mach is beautiful, isn't it? Edelgard was trying to make conversation with the student. The student, however, was absorbed in his work. He wore glasses. Edie, we should get going. Our classroom is right over there. But Edelgard refused to go yet. She decided to sit on the ground and watch the student paint. He was quite skilled, every line and every expression, simply the entire scene was captured by him. After 2 minutes, Dorothea gave up trying to convince Edelgard to move, and she sat down beside her future house leader on the grass. However, unlike Edelgard, who was absorbed in the painting skills of the student, Dorothea felt bored out of her mind. You know, there are so many amazing places I want to show you. Can we just... Hush, Edelgard silenced her. She observed the student in order to learn from him. He is an amazing painter. Perhaps he might consider a post in the Empire. What the Empire needs is more people like him. Talented craftsmen that know their craft. An hour passed, and it was now sunset. The beautiful red sun illuminated the monastery. The student had made great progress. His painting seemed to be almost complete. It was the most accurate depiction of the place before her that Edelgard could imagine. In the meantime, Dorothea had fallen asleep with her head resting on Edelgard's lap, but Edelgard had been so focused on the student's painting that she had completely missed it. Everyone remained silent until the student decided to take a break and move on. You are amazing. I must ask, would you consider a post in the Empire? The green mist-haired student dropped his paintbrush in surprise. But Edelgard snatched the paintbrush just as it was about to hit the floor. Apologies for startling you. My name is Edelgard von Hresselweg. I want to let you know that you will always have a place in the Empire should you desire it. Ignatz looked both nervous and humbled to receive such an offer. Hold there, princess. You can't just go around recruiting my fellow classmates. Claude. I am sorry. Ignatz looked at the stranger that interrupted the silence. The boy had brown hair, and his skin color was a little darker than that of your regular Foglanes. He wore a cozy mantle and on his mantle was a golden cape. So you must be Claude. Edelgard and Claude held eye contact for what felt like an eternity. His eyes, on the offset, appeared harmless. He feigned joy, but deep down there was something more. In that aspect, he reminded Edelgard of her tormentor, Lord Arundel. You are the ambitious type, aren't you, princess? What makes you say that? I'll keep that a secret. As a master of schemes, I can't lay all my cards on the table. I am sure you understand. I understand, and I want you to know that it wasn't my intention to steal your classmate away from you. I know that, Claude responded. Besides, only professors have the authority to recruit students. Although, according to Professor Hanneman, this practice has gone unused for almost 4 decades. I doubt Lady Rhea will allow the practice this year. It's not Ignatz's combat skills that caught my eye. I figured as much. A dissatisfied sigh escaped Claude's lips. Meanwhile, Ignatz was trying to find the courage to speak. My goal is to become a knight. Gentle words came from Edelgard's lips. Why would you become a knight when, with your skills, dukes, emperors, and kings will vie for your attention? Here. Claude clapped his hands. Dukes, emperors, and kings will vie for your attention, Ignatz. Edelgard looked not one bit amused by Claude's performance. One day, I am sure you won't have a problem finding work. She gently touched Ignatz's shoulder. But I want to be. No, I need to become a knight. Ignatz had mustered all of his courage. Why would you do something so foolish as to throw your life away for an empty code of chivalry when you can live a peaceful life with your gifts? When Edelgard asked Ignatz, she did so with a soft tone and caring eyes for the young student. The more I hear from you, princess, the more fascinating you become. Claude complimented her. You are the first person I met to critique chivalry. It's not that all their values are bad, but what honor has done to this continent. After reading a few history books, you will find yourself disgusted with the notion of honor. Claude did not respond verbally to Edelgard, but a smile curved his lips as he heard her words. Cheers to a pleasant year with you, princess. My name is Edelgard. Right, princess. Claude waved with his hand as he went on his way. Ignatz, meanwhile, seemed to be eager to leave as well. Wait, Ignatz. Will you tell me one of these days why you want to become a knight? Edelgard pleaded with him. Ignatz started to sweat. I am sorry. It might be for the best if you leave me be. And with that, Ignatz took his things and ran away from Edelgard. It was like another knife was plunged into Edelgard's heart. Perhaps it's just the disgusting person I am deep down inside that turns away most people. Dorothea yawned as she woke. Edie, did something happen? It's nothing. Edelgard refused to say what was on her mind. Did the young man break your heart? Dorothea insisted. Edelgard shook her head firmly, indicating that, no, he did not. So what is on your mind? He and Annette, they ran away from me. So what? For a moment, Edelgard considered opening herself to her classmate, but she decided against it. As I said, it's nothing. Edie, it's nothing unusual for people to sometimes run away. There are many reasons why they act how they act. Don't be so harsh on yourself. Dorothea's voice was soft, and Edelgard's broken heart mended a bit after hearing her nice words. During the brief pause in the conversation that occurred between them, both of their attentions were focused on the setting sun. They felt the gentle heat of the crimson sun as it shone brightly on their faces. We should get moving. Our classroom is right over there. Dorothea showed with her fingers the Adrestian banner hanging on the right side of the wall. Fine, lead the way. 30 seconds later, the duo walked into the cozy classroom. An inviting fireplace sits off to the left. You could feel the warmth radiating from the fire in the whole room. Curiosity getting the better of Edelgard, she decided to take a seat. The tables and chairs were very accommodating. A smile appeared on Edelgard's face as she relaxed inside her new classroom. If the rest of my class is anything like Dorothea, I shouldn't have any trouble. How is it, Edie? It is lovely, Edelgard admitted. For the Academy's sake, it better stay that way. I worked to the bones to get here. There was a wave of unprecedented anger in Dorothea's voice. Dorothea? Edelgard wondered. Are you feeling all right? Dorothea looked solemnly at her until she switched back to her usual upbeat self. It was nothing, Edie. If you say so, Edelgard did not want to pressure her. But if there is anything your house leader can do for you, must only ask. I will. Dorothea smiled at the offer. Dorothea started to sit next to Edie and the two warmed themselves at the fireplace. Gareg Mach isn't as warm as Adrestia, Edelgard stated. No, it is not. Today definitely could have been warmer. But what do I expect, it's spring. From the corner of their room, they heard some snoring. There was someone asleep here? Dorothea saw the bewildered look on Edelgard's face. Oh, that's just Linhard. Right, Dorothea's report mentioned the heir to House Hevering being a bit of a daydreamer and sleeper. It seems I got my work cut out with him. Should I wake him? Dorothea asked innocently. No, let him sleep for now. The school year hasn't started yet. After a few minutes in which Edelgard checked out every corner of this room, she started to smile. So this is the classroom both of my parents studied. She touched her chest to realize that her heart was beating with joy. Are we ready to depart, Edie? Just one more moment. One of Edelgard's fingers reached out to touch the Black Eagle banner. I never understood why our class is called the Black Eagles. Dorothea stated plainly. An unfamiliar voice answered. That is because the Empire's coat of arms is black and the eagle comes from the Adrestian flag. Hence, Black Eagles. Oh, Linhard, you are finally awake. Dorothea teased him. Linhard's answer is correct. Edelgard praised Linhard. Of course it is. After all, I spent all these hours reading about the history of Fodlan. Linhard showed them an impressive collection of books. There was a bit of everything there. From gardening to tactics, almost a small library was on his desk. So he is actually quite industrious. That's good, Dorothea's report sounded worrisome. May I ask what brought you to read so many books? But all Linhard did in response was shrug with his shoulders and yawn as he said, beats me. I forgot. His response earned Edelgard's laughter. You can't be serious. Linhard, I promise I won't tell anyone. Edie, that was not a joke, that's just how Linhard is. Dorothea chimed in. Edelgard's eyes widened in response. Out with it, Linhard. What have you been studying that required so many different books? There must be more to Linhard than meets the eye. I have seen things ordinary people would not believe, and there is something strange about Linhard. What are you hiding from me? Ugh, you sound just like my mother. Linhard yawned and a few seconds later he once again slept soundly, his head resting on the mountain of books he collected. I am not done talking to you. Edelgard marched across the room to Linhard's table. Yet she did not hear a sound from him. Is he passed out? Tired? Yes. Passed out? No, he's just resting before the next book. Edelgard was at a loss for words. Dorothea, we can go now. Edelgard lacked the strength and will to deal with Linhard's antics today. All right, next is the training grounds. Dorothea's mood was once again happy, but Edelgard's mood had taken a hit regarding Linhard. What do I do with a student like him? Don't break your beautiful head in regards to Linhard. He is who he is. Occasionally, he is a fountain of wisdom. And there we are. This massive iron gate leads to the training grounds. From beyond the massive iron gate, they heard shouting. "My name is Casper. Come at me. I am Ferdinand von Aegir." Dorothea and Edelgard opened the massive gate. And what they saw could only be described as pure chaos. There were a bunch of students who looked in a massive battle, and everyone seemed to be fighting against each other. "Welcome to our free-for-all battle. If you can wield a weapon, you are welcome to join us," a blonde-haired student exclaimed. His uniform looked more like armor than cloth. And he wore a blue cape. So this must be the Prince of Fargus. "Eyes up here, boar," a blue-haired student with a sword aimed at Dimitri's heart. But Dimitri saw the attack coming. With the end of his spear shaft, Dimitri blocked the attack. "Watch out, here I come." A giant of a man with 2 training gauntlets stormed at the two. If he hadn't warned them, they would have been in a world of hurt. Dimitri and the blue-haired student looked at each other and nodded to put their differences aside to fight the massive muscular beast. However, the beast was not alone. A smaller student with ice-cold hair and eyes came to his aid. "I thought we agreed to not have teams." A ginger-headed man spoke. "Bari, what's his name is right." The man with blue hair spoke to him while simultaneously striking at him for a second time. "My name is not what's his name. I am the Ferdinand von Aegir." The man with the blue hair simply shrugged his shoulders and responded, "Whatever. Saying something so impolite is not acceptable. It's not right to disregard Ferdinand in such a manner, Felix," Dimitri said. Dimitri pushed Felix aside as he prepared to fight Ferdinand. Felix did not see Dimitri's hands coming. He was pushed against the smaller boy with ice-cold hair. "I am Casper, by the way. And I will pummel you into the ground." "You may try. You may try," Felix repeated. Edelgard and Dorothea were watching the battle from the sidelines of the arena. "So these two are the heir to House Frildarius and the second son of House Burgles," Dorothea explained, "and neither are interested in a date." Edelgard sighed again. She wasn't interested in dating anyone at present. Or rather, she was afraid nobody would find her beautiful once they got to know her. Edelgard's eyes wandered to Dimitri and Ferdinand. Both were lance fighters, yet the differences in their skill levels were vast. Ferdinand struggled to fight this beast of a man. When it comes to religious devotion, no country comes close to Fargus. "My greatest adversary will be this monstrous human being." There is more to Dimitri than meets the eye. Deep down, he harbors a darker side. If what the monster that murdered my uncle told me about the tragedy of Duskur is true, then he is a ticking time bomb. A nasty little strategy that my uncle has prepared against me. Dimitri met Ferdinand's every blow. After getting bored, he countered with such force that his training weapon broke and Ferdinand was sent flying through the arena. The crest of Bladdad had at his strike manifested. Ferdinand was crushed against the nearby pillar and he started to bleed from head to toe. "Mercedes, please take care of Ferdinand's wounds." A girl with pale blonde hair appeared from outside the arena. After hearing that Ferdinand was hurt, she rushed to his side and helped him recover. "I can still fight." Ferdinand pushed her aside. His pride had clearly been wounded. Ferdinand charged at Dimitri as he geared up for a final blow that would knock out his opponent. Yet the final strike was missed. Edelgard had picked a training weapon as soon as she saw Ferdinand's foolhardy attempt, and she blocked Dimitri's strike in the nick of time. "That's enough, Ferdinand," Edelgard commanded. "Who are you?" Ferdinand asked until he saw the flower-shaped crest appear alongside his mysterious savior. "You can't be her." "So we meet again, Edelgard," Dimitri spoke as if he knew her. "What do you mean by that?" Edelgard experienced a cold shower from Dimitri's words. She had never met him, and he was giving her the creeps. Dimitri dropped his weapon. "I do not wish to fight you. Come with me, let us catch up." Edelgard's head hurt whenever Dimitri spoke to her in such a familiar manner. "No, you can't leave, this fight is far from over." Two voices spoke simultaneously. They belonged to Ferdinand and Felix. It was apparent in their tone and body language that they both had a bone to pick with Dimitri. Dimitri merely sighed as he prepared to set foot outside the arena. Yet before he left, he went closer to Edelgard and grabbed her by the hands. Edelgard wanted to strike him with her axe. She was clearly uncomfortable. What could he possibly want from me? And why is he acting like we already know each other? Is it to throw me off guard? Dorothea contemplated getting between the two. Dmitri gave her a pleading look not to do it, while Edelgard pleaded for the opposite. In the end, Dorothea saw this as a harmless date and left Edelgard to her fate. I wish you good luck. She said this while smiling from ear to ear. Dorothea, why? Don't leave me alone with him. That guy gives me the creeps. Edelgard and Dmitri ventured a few steps further into the secluded area. While Dmitri was looking, Edelgard put on an act of self-assurance for him to observe. What do you want to talk to me about, Dmitri? You created quite a scene back there. For your sake, I hope it's important. Do you still have the dagger that I gave you? The what? Edelgard's eye shot open. A blue dagger, Dmitri responded. There was a blue dagger among my possessions after I left the kingdom, yet I don't remember someone gifting it to me. Dmitri's head hung low. Do you remember playing with a boy? Edelgard's head started to hurt. I do, but what has this do with? I was that boy, El. Don't you ever use that name again. Edelgard was furious. The boy in her foggy memories was nothing like the monstrous person standing next to her. Who told you the nickname that my family gave me? Was it Cornelia and her household? What does Cornelia have to do with this? No, you told me. He tried to approach her. Every ounce of Edelgard's body told her to mistrust him. She gazed deep into his eyes, and what she found reminded her of her tormentor, the eyes of someone who revels in torture and suffering. With every ounce of her strength, Edelgard pushed Dmitri away. In the same manner, she resisted her torturer. Don't you ever call me El again. Fine, Edelgard. Dmitri looked at her as if someone close had died right before his eyes. Please, Edelgard, pretend our conversations today never happened. As a response, he received a deep sigh. Fine, but you have to promise me to not pull such a stunt again. I won't cross your path like that ever again. And with that, Dmitri departed on his way. His head hung low the entire time. Yet, Edelgard had seen the past facade and she saw a monster, one similar to the man that made a monster out of her. Edelgard headed off in the opposite direction. On her way, she walked past the commoner rooms. She wanted to peek inside, but alas, she stopped herself from doing something inappropriate. I wonder where the nobles live. Arg, to think the commoners had it so much harder than us to get here and they are still treated like this. After 2 minutes, Edelgard stood at the edge of the lake Flane had shown her. She desperately wanted to relax. The stress of today has been too much. How are you, my child? The voice belonged to the last person Edelgard had longed to see. I have been better, Edelgard stated honestly. Please, Lady Rhea, at this hour I will make a poor conversation partner. Oh, I doubt that. Rhea insisted, I know just the thing you might need. Please follow me, young Miss Hresvelg. Edelgard let out a massive sigh. The sun had almost entirely disappeared. Rhea reached for Edelgard's hand, and while the princess waited a moment, she ultimately did take her hand. What I will show you will have to remain a secret between us, Rhea ordered in her usual calm manner. Edelgard nodded, while Rhea showed her a hidden entrance. This system of underground passages was built by Saint Sirios and her cardinals. As Archbishop, I know of this system and only a few others know of this entrance. Edelgard's eyes adjusted to the darkness, but Rhea conjured a bright holy spell that illuminated the darkness. Edelgard, should you be lost, you can always use your crest to show you the way. Rhea manifested her Major Siro's crest. And a breathtaking red light began to emanate from the walls. The sights that Edelgard beheld took her breath away. You can also try this. Rhea stopped her holy light spell and instead she made a small step behind Edelgard and whispered in Edelgard's ear. Open your heart. In an instant, Edelgard saw her father before her. She saw the man who protected her when she was a child, and the warmth of this memory manifested in the flower-shaped crest that materialized before her. You are doing great. Rest assured that Anselma would be proud of you. There is a genius within her daughter. Edelgard genuinely felt flattered by the compliment. For the first time, Rhea's words brought a small smile to her lips. Now we follow the lines. They point us in the direction of where we need to go. Rhea pointed at the red lines on the underground walls. Their shapes pointed in one direction, and so Edelgard and Rhea followed them until they seemingly reached a dead end. Yet on the wall glowed the beautiful Ciro's crest. Rhea delicately took Edelgard's hand and they both pressed their fingers into the flower's center. There was a loud sound as the stone started to move. Edelgard made a few steps inside. Candles provided warm light, and the air was fragrant with familiarity. A bath more luxurious than Edelgard's own in Inver appeared before her eyes. They entered a magnificent hall adorned with numerous granite statues. Each statue depicted a holy woman and a man at her side. They were locked in various intimate poses that made Edelgard flush with crimson. "This bath is just for you," Rhea spoke softly. "I took the liberty and left a set of spare clothes for you here." Rhea's fingers pointed at a gigantic wooden wardrobe. "Thank you, Lady Rhea." Edelgard's face was still red. "Think nothing of it, Scion of Hresvleg. Should you require anything, just let me know." And with that, Rhea bid Edelgard farewell as she went ahead. With the use of her crest, she sealed the door. And left Edelgard all on her own in this breathtaking bath of hers. Check the description for the links to the author.